In this video, we are going to complete the paradigm, or we're going to look at the remaining forms of this word adelphos. Up here, we have what we covered in the last video, the nominative and the accusative, in both the singular and the plural. And today we will look at the genitive and dative. So the genitive of adelphos is to. Adelphu. Remember, we are including the definite article. And the plural of the genitive, ton, adelphone. The dative, singular, to, adelpho. And the plural, tois, adelphois. Remember, this is our iota subscript. It's come up a couple times before. Okay, now, we said before that the nominative is the subject. Generally speaking, the accusative is the object. The genitive shows possession. So in this case, if you see tu adelphu, you might think of something like of the brother. I don't know. I'll just say it now. We'll write it up when we'll have some examples here in a little bit. This would be of the brothers. The dative case is the case where one of its functions is that it shows to whom something is given. So say you give a book to the brother. Here would be to the brothers. So now we'll look at a couple of examples. There, we have now we have a magically clean board. So we'll introduce a different verb this time. Let's look at this verb, lege. Lege means he, she, or it speaks. He, she, it, or even one says, speaks. And from a while ago, we had a word, angelos. So we'll say down here, let's see if this is going to work. Our first example, lege ho angelos tois adelphois. And remember also that it's very beneficial. You might know what this says right away, but just to get in the practice, we'll look here at this word. I didn't write up the meaning, but ho angelos. This is also nominative. This is the same class or declension of nouns. The messenger or the angel. And then our verb here, lege, is speaking. And remember, without ho angelos, this verb means, and by the way, it's not lele. Lege, sorry about that. Lege, this by itself, he, she, or it, or one, but since we have a subject specified, that becomes the subject. The angel is speaking, and then here, we could say, we would identify this as masculine dative plural, just as this is masculine nominative singular. The angel is speaking to the brothers. And we might even throw in another word here. We could say, we could continue this sentence. Now, this word, if you sound it out, my writing is a bit terrible. Apostolu. The nominative would be apostolos. You might get the meaning of that. Apostle. And this would be, let's see here, masculine, genitive, singular. Again, so the angel is speaking to the brothers of the apostle. Okay, so in this part of the video, we want to broaden our understanding of the cases just a little bit. And we're going to do that by examining this passage from the Gospel of Mark, Mark 1:8. We haven't gone over verbs or anything, but let's go through the passage. It's one I'm sure you know, and then we'll talk about a few issues. Ego e baptisma himas hidati, autos de baptise himas en pneumati hagio. So this word here, ego, we've probably heard the word ego. This is the word for I. This is nominative. Singular, it's the very same in Latin, and it is where we get the word ego. A baptisma means I baptized. Again, we're setting verbs to a side. That's kind of the next video. Himas is accusative plural. You, the second person pronoun, accusative plural. I baptized you, hidati. Now, we haven't come across this word yet, or like we haven't looked at third declension. This comes from a, make sure that, probably looks horrible, hedor. Hedor is the Greek word for water. And it comes into English sometimes as like this sort of prefix, hydro. Like, obviously anything hydro-powered is water-powered. Hydrogen, like in that word genitive, means comes from water. Obviously, hydrogen is contained in water. This is the dative case here. And this is a neuter noun. We haven't really talked about neuter nouns, but we did mention, I think, that in addition to masculine, Greek has feminine and neuter nouns. So this would be neuter, I'll abbreviate it like that, neuter dative singular. And let's go on, and then we'll talk about this a little more broadly. Autos de baptise himas. So here, and this is, by the way, like a New Testament usage of this word. You don't get this usage in classical Greek. But he will baptize you, that same word, en pneumati hagio. This is also, this whole phrase here is in the dative. So this is dative, this is dative. We have this preposition, I think we came across it like entokosmo. It's just in, literally, in. Now, pneumati or pneuma, like we get the word pneumatic, it means a spirit. That's how we'll take it here. Spirit, wind, something like that. And then hagio is holy, sacred. So John is, of course, saying, I baptized you, hidati. And we're going to talk about why is he using the dative here, autos de. But he, the one who comes, Yeshua, will baptize you in pneumati hagio, in the Holy Spirit. Now, if we just take a step back for a minute, and we've talked about how Greek has these 5 cases. It has a nominative, I'll abbreviate the ones we've already done. It has a genitive, it has a dative, and an accusative. But Greek has come from a language like Latin, like Sanskrit, like Pali, like all kinds of languages. It's descended from a language called Proto-Indo-European. And Proto-Indo-European had 8 cases. Oh, by the way, it also had a vocative. We'll put that down here. Vocative kind of connected with the nominative. So that means we're missing 3 cases in Greek. They are the ablative, the instrumental, that's my version of an R there, and the locative. If we start with the locative, you can probably tell that talks about location. If a word's in the locative, it's telling you where something is. Instrumental, this is a terrible R, I'm going to try to go in and fix that. Instrumental tells you like by what means, with something. It could be even like accompanying, like with a group of people, or with something, or by means of something. Now, ablative is actually, in Latin, ablative has the idea of like separation. So, I went straight home from work. That from work would be like an ablative. So now I bring this up because it's a good way to think about how the cases are being used. So in Greek, we say that they've lost these cases. Really what they're doing is they're using prepositions to clarify what once was being clarified with like a different word form. But at the same time, if we think about the instrumental, it's possible to think about this word here, hidati, as really being neuter instrumental, singular. Now you won't find that in a lot of books. If you look this up, they might say it's the dative of means or something, but that's really saying the same thing. And so all of what I just said was to help us understand this little word here. I baptized you with water, by means of water. Now, here's the interesting thing though, and this is one of those things that you get into. Now it's interesting, maybe it's not interesting to everybody, but notice here we have the dative case again, but we have a preposition. And if you look up, I think I looked at the King James, the NIV, and the NRSV, you wouldn't know from the English translation that the Greek was different. There's a couple of things you could say about that. One is that it's possible that just using this preposition doesn't actually change the meaning, so that, when it goes into English, or when we bring it into English, it's not going to look different. That this has exactly the same meaning as this. But it's one of those things you could think about, that maybe this preposition has an effect. I'm not going to litigate that right now. I'm just planting this seed because this is the sort of thing that comes up when we start looking at the actual Greek texts and we compare them to the English. Sometimes this sort of thing is going to happen. And, it's not just because a group of people have decided that it's okay to translate it one way, like by a committee or something, doesn't mean that that's right. So I just want to plant that kind of seed as well. And again, just to mention that when you think about Greek sentences, or really any sentences, that if you start to kind of imagine the words, whether they have prepositions or not, like that they have this kind of, they have these functions, that they're going to tell it, in addition to the ones we've covered, that there's a location. I think I mentioned it already, like entokosmo, that would be locative. Instrumental, this is kind of an instrumental, an ablative from someplace. So that can kind of help us clarify what's going on in Greek sentences. So just quickly, I want to plant one other seed, which has to do with translation, and that is as follows. To assume that this passage has only one correct English translation is probably wrong. Actually, I think it's demonstrably wrong. And what that means is that when you print a translation, and you'll see this, you see this even in Bibles or elsewhere, that sometimes footnotes are used because, words have a large range of meanings, and in, connected together in context, usually the meanings become a little more restricted. But the point is that it may be necessary. It's probably not, and I'll just say the same thing I already said, probably one translation will not completely capture the entire depth of, and the breadth and depth of the original.